Folks, it's Mira Dessy, the ingredient guru, and I am here once again to talk with you about matters related to your pantry, feeding, nourishing your family, and also talking about being prepared. As we're going through these challenging times, there are certainly things that we can do to help make sure that we are able to feed and nourish our family and to support ourselves and those around us. So one of the things what I wanted to talk about today is talking about veggies. I know I've heard from a number of people that they've gone to the grocery store and perhaps they haven't had as many vegetables or produce or as much variety as they want, and it seems to be a little bit hit and miss. I do believe that the supply chain is coming back and it's getting a little bit better, but certainly there are some gaps in that. And so that's something that we want to make sure that we're getting. We want to make sure we're getting enough fresh food and enough vegetable matter to be healthy. So there's a couple of things that I wanted to share about the concept of how we get vegetables into us. One, of course, is that if we're buying it fresh, we obviously only buy a little bit, enough to get us through, the week or whatever. So we want to make sure that we're buying what we're actually going to use. Overbuying veggies just increases waste if we're not using it. So we do want to make sure that we're being responsible about that. If we buy more than we can use, then we want to look at ways to preserve it. And one of those is freezing or cooking or canning. So, if you cook it and throw it in the freezer, or if you blanch it and put it in the freezer, that's great. If you know how to can and make pickles and other things like that, that's certainly great as well. I did have a question a few days ago from someone wanting to know if frozen vegetables were just as good as fresh. And truthfully, they are. What happens is when food is grown in an agricultural setting and they're going to freeze it, they generally pick it, clean it, and flash freeze it right away. And so you're getting good nutritional value because it's fresh picked. Things that come to the grocery store have perhaps been picked a little bit underripe. They ripen on the way. If we leave them, then they tend to lose a little bit of their nutritional value as we're going along. So they both are good. I do prefer fresh simply because it has better texture and more uses. Frozen is a good option. One of the things we need to keep in mind, though, is this is the perfect time of year to consider planting a garden. I am seeing a lot of talk on the news and different media channels and that sort of thing about the concept of victory gardening coming back. So victory gardening is what they did during the Second World War in order for people to be able to have vegetables. They were growing their own gardens and making sure that they had vegetables, and they were growing everywhere. Every single small plot of land that would support plants was planted so that they could have food to feed the nation and to feed their families. I'm not saying that we have to necessarily go to that extent, but I think it is a good idea for families to consider going back to gardening. If nothing else, it's actually a good science project for the kids while you're homeschooling. But it's easy to do, and there are a number of things that you can add in that will make it easier for you. So for those of us who are in the warmer, more southerly climates, it is already the beginning of growing season, and it may be too late to start certain plants. So you may have to purchase those already started because they may not have enough time to ripen. There are also other things that are easier to grow if you start them from the plants rather than from the seeds. For example, onion sets. I find that certain greens do better if I start them from the sets rather than like a tree collard, that sort of thing. So just learning about what the different plants are that are in your area. For those that are in a more northerly climate, then you are definitely in the right time of year to be starting from seed. One of my favorite ways to do that is to actually use egg cartons, to use those little cups. You poke a couple of holes in the bottom, fill it with good clean dirt, and then put your seed in. And the reason you want to use the egg cup rather than the plastic trays or the little paper things is because if you have to take that plant out of the cup or the square or whatever to plant it, you're disturbing the roots, and they don't like that. And so that can make them a little bit weaker. If you have holes in the egg cup and you're watering in that, so obviously that means you have to put it in some kind of a tray when you're growing it. But when you cut that up and put it in the ground, that egg carton is going to break down and the roots are going to be able to get through it because it gets moist and soggy pretty quickly. So that's a great way to be able to reuse that egg carton. And I'm talking the cardboard ones, obviously, not the styrofoam ones. And it's also a great way to grow a plant without disturbing the roots. So one of the other things that we need to look at is what will grow well in your area. And some yards have a lot of sun, some yards don't have a lot of sun, so we have to look at what your availability is. A lot of different communities will have community gardens, and so you may want to look and see if that's something that you would rather do rather than planting it in your own yard. In a community garden, they have set up an area where they've taken care of the ground, and there's usually water available so that people can buy a plot of land or rent a plot of land, come in, and then be able to utilize that to grow whatever it is that they want to grow. When you're looking at growing food in your own yard, I'm here to tell you that you do not need a huge patch of ground. You can certainly do container gardening and grow them in pots, and it can be in a balcony, in a patio, on a side yard, that sort of thing. You can also do square foot gardening. There is a very, very famous and popular book by a man named Mel Bartholomew called Square Foot Gardening, where he talks about the fact that all you need is 1 square foot and you can get so many of certain things. Certain plants you grow, like I think carrots are 9 to a square foot. Collards are 1 to a square foot, but you can plant a lot of food very intensively. One of the other strategies is to look at what will grow well in your yard. For example, I had a yard at one point that I was able to do fruits very well, but I could not do tomatoes and things like that simply because they grew too fast and split. There was too much sun. And so trading with people is certainly a great way to do it. You can garden cooperatively with your neighbors. Maybe you're growing the herbs and they're growing certain vegetables, or somebody else is growing fruit, or somebody else has greens or beets or whatever. So to look at, can you guys come together and perhaps each talk about what you're going to grow so that you can share. And there's actually another really good reason for that, because certain things are exceedingly prolific. If you've ever grown zucchini, I will tell you it takes 1, maybe 2 seeds to grow enough zucchini for an entire family for an entire season. I once made the mistake of planting 8 zucchini plants. I was practically throwing zucchini at anybody who walked past me because zucchini plants are incredibly prolific, and at a certain point you're going to find one that's the size of a dugout canoe. So, just thinking about that. One of the other things that I really wanted to share with you is that the quality of the seed that you're planting is very, very important. You want to make sure that you are getting seeds that are not GMO treated and that are basically cleanly raised. And there are companies out there that have something called the Safe Seed Pledge. Those are the companies that you want to buy from. I put the link down below for you so that you'll be able to find them and choose which ones you want to work with. But those companies definitely avoid genetic modification and make sure that their seeds are good quality. They're harvesting them from the plants and then, processing them so that they can use them to sell to the public. But that would definitely be the best choice for you. I will also share that right now we're talking about concerns about if veggies are available or if enough veggies are available, and so considering having a garden. But it is also a really good idea to have at home, in part because this way you have fresh food, like literally fresh. You can pick it and serve it right away in your yard. And so you're getting a great source of nutrient dense items that you can have at home. that you don't have to worry about where it came from, how far it traveled, how it was raised, what it was bathed in chemically, or anything else like that. And again, I'm not saying you have to be like the world's biggest farmer, but even just growing a few small things is a great way to nurture and nourish your family. So I hope you'll all consider doing that. I am going to put a few links down below a little bit later, but if you have any questions, please feel free to leave me comments in the notes and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.